From Miami to New York. When I was 25 years old, I worked in an office in Miami. My future looked bright, and I enjoyed my life even though I didn't have any close family. I worked hard and spent my free time sailing my small boat on the weekends. On Saturday afternoon, I decided to sail a little farther than usual. The strong wind pulled my boat into the open ocean. Far from the shore, when I had lost all hope, a small ship from England spotted me and rescued me. It was on its way to New York, so I joined the journey. The trip was rough, with lots of storms, but I worked as a crew member to pay for my passage. When I finally reached New York, my clothes were old and torn. I had only $1 left. I used it for a meal and a place to sleep that first day. But after that, I was out of money and hungry. The next morning, as I walked through a street in town, I saw a child with a large apple. He took a small bite, then tossed the rest onto the ground. I was starving and wanted that apple badly, but every time I tried to pick it up, someone would walk by, and I'd pretend I wasn't interested. Finally, I decided to grab it, even if people saw me. Just then, a man from a nearby window called to me. He invited me inside, where a well-dressed servant showed me into a fancy room, where two older gentlemen were sitting and having a serious conversation. Their breakfast was on the table, and I couldn't stop staring. I was so hungry. Little did I know, these two men had made a strange bet a few days earlier. Those two brothers had been arguing about a peculiar idea. They finally decided to settle it with a bet, as the English often do. The bet involved a rare $1 million bill that the bank had recently issued. One brother believed that if a poor, honest person with no friends arrived in New York and only had this $1 million bill, he would eventually starve because no one would trust him. The other brother disagreed, betting $20,000 that the man could survive for 30 days without trouble. The first brother then went to the bank to get the $1 million bill, and they waited by the window, looking for the right person to test this theory on. They were searching for someone poor, honest, and a stranger to the city. When they saw me from the window, they thought I was the right man for their bet. After hearing my story, they handed me a sealed envelope. They told me not to open it until I was alone in my hotel room. I didn't understand why they were being so mysterious, but I took the envelope and left. Outside, I looked for the apple again, but it was gone. Frustrated, I opened the envelope and saw the $1 million bill inside. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I looked around for a place to eat and was finally able to buy a hearty meal. When I tried to pay, the restaurant owner couldn't change the bill, but told me I could come and eat any time. The second part of the story can be woven with a focus on the evolving relationships and inner transformations of the characters, capturing deepened emotions, unexpected conflicts, and moments of tenderness that reveal the complexities of love, friendship, and ambition. Let's continue from where they left off, exploring how each character navigates the choices and feelings emerging from their past and present interactions. As the sun rose over the quiet town of Willowbrook, Aidan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, mulling over the night's vivid memories. His laughter with Nora, the warm, unguarded moments, and her reluctant yet genuine smile. It all kept replaying in his mind. He couldn't ignore how naturally things fell into place within them, as if they shared unspoken memories before they even met. Yet, he knew better than to assume she felt the same way. As he dressed and made his way to work, a slight hesitation slowed his steps. Is it too soon? Will she even want to see me again? On the other side of town, Nora awoke to the soft glow of morning light filtering through her bedroom window. The memories from the previous evening filled her mind. Despite herself, she'd been drawn to Aiden, his kindness and openness challenging her usual instinct to keep people at a distance. She'd come to Willowbrook to escape, to rebuild her life quietly, not to tangle herself up with anyone, least of all someone so deeply rooted in his small town. She could feel the fear creeping in, whispering doubts. What if I can't offer him what he needs? What if my past is too much for him? Yet, as the day unfolded, fate seemed intent on bringing them closer. Nora walked into Willowbrook's local coffee shop, only to find Aiden standing there, waiting for his order. Their eyes met across the room, both caught off guard. "Nora, good morning," he said, managing to sound genuinely surprised yet undeniably happy to see her. "Fancy meeting you here." "Good morning, Aiden," she replied, smiling in spite of herself. "Looks like we both needed a caffeine fix." They shared a quiet laugh, each sensing an unspoken connection that pulled them closer. Their conversation flowed, as natural as it had the night before. And soon, they found themselves on an unplanned walk through the nearby park. Aiden told Nora stories of his childhood in Willowbrook, the simple joys of growing up in a town where everyone knew each other. He showed her the places that had shaped him, the corner where he'd played catch with his father, the hill where he'd made snow angels as a kid. Nora listened, absorbing each story, feeling her heart soften with each shared memory. Aiden's words was so different from her own, filled with warmth and stability, and though she couldn't imagine belonging anywhere, much less in a small town like this, she found herself wishing for the impossible, a life like his, peaceful and rooted. As they reached the edge of the lake, Aiden paused, looking over the water. He hesitated, then glanced at her. "Nora, I know you might think I'm rushing things, but I feel like there's something real here. Am I wrong?" Nora's heart raced. She'd spent years building walls to protect herself, but here was Aiden, honest and vulnerable, asking her to let him in. She searched his face, her mind racing with the risks and fears that had kept her guarded for so long. But seeing his gentle, unwavering gaze, she felt an urge to let down her walls, if only for a moment. "No, Aiden," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not wrong, but there's so much I haven't told you. Things about my past that I'm not proud of." Aiden reached out, his fingers grazing her hand. "Whatever it is, Nora, I want to know. I want to understand." Tears pricked Nora's eyes as she told him about her past, how she'd been running for so long, from her mistakes, her guilt, and the people who'd hurt her. She opened up about her struggles, the isolation she felt in her old life, and now she'd come to Willowbrook to escape it all, hoping to rebuild herself away from judgment. When she finished, Aidan looked at her with quiet acceptance, his hand still holding hers. "Nora, I can't imagine what you've been through, but I do know that people change, and you're here now, doing your best, aren't you?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Her words were a balm to her heart, reassuring her that maybe, just maybe, she deserved a second chance. They stayed there, lost in the moment, sharing a silence that spoke of understanding and hope. Over the next few weeks, Aidan and Nora's connection deepened, their days filled with small but meaningful moments. They explored Willowbrook together, Nora slowly letting herself enjoy Aidan's company, allowing her heart to soften. Aidan, in turn, found himself opening up as well, telling her about his own insecurities, his dreams, and his fears. He confessed how he'd always longed for someone who truly understood him, who saw past his friendly exterior to the deeper layers beneath. One evening, Aidan invited Nora to a town gathering, a small festival celebrating the harvest season. It was a lively event, with families laughing, children playing, and friends sharing stories. Nora felt nervous at first, unsure how the townspeople would perceive her, but Aidan's hand held hers firmly, reassuring her. As they walked through the crowd, several of Aidan's friends greeted her warmly, treating her as if she'd always been a part of their circle. She found herself laughing and talking with ease, enjoying the simple, genuine warmth of the people around her. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. Later, as they danced under the stars, Nora felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She was no longer running, no longer hiding. With Aidan by her side, she could imagine a future free of her past burdens. But just as she began to feel secure, a figure from her past unexpectedly appeared in Willowbrook. Liam, an old acquaintance from her previous life, arrived, seeking her out with a smirk that sent chills down her spine. He reminded her of the choices she'd made, the mistakes she tried to leave behind. In a matter of moments, her peace shattered. Liam threatened to expose her past to the townspeople, to Aidan, if she didn't pay him off. Her mind raced with fear and desperation. She didn't have the money he demanded, but the last thing she wanted was to lose Aidan or the life she'd begun to build. Feeling trapped, she decided to face Liam alone, hoping to reason with him. She met him late one evening at the edge of the town, near the lake. Her heart pounded as she tried to plead with him, but Liam was unyielding, his demands growing more aggressive. Unbeknownst to her, Aidan had followed. He'd sensed something was wrong and had seen her leave in the middle of the night, her face pale with fear. Now, standing in the shadows, he heard Liam's threat, and his heart twisted with anger and protectiveness. Without hesitation, Aidan stepped forward, confronting Liam, his voice steady yet filled with determination. "You need to leave, Liam. Whatever hold you think you have over Nora, it ends here." Liam scoffed, but saw the resolve in Aiden's eyes. After a tense standoff, he reluctantly backed down, realizing he was unmatched. He left, muttering curses under his breath, and soon it was just Aiden and Nora standing by the lake. Nora trembled, overwhelmed with relief and guilt. She couldn't hold back her tears, feeling the weight of her past crashing down on her. "Aiden, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to know. I thought I could leave it all behind." Aiden pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Nora, I don't care about your past. What matters is who you are now, and what we have together. Don't you see that?" She looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. In that moment, she realized that Aiden was her anchor, her safe harbor. She didn't have to run anymore. She could face her fears and start anew, with him by her side. As the days passed, Nora found herself truly healing. With Aiden's unwavering support, she began to embrace her life in Willowbrook, finally letting herself dream of a future filled with love, friendship, and happiness. The bond between her and Aiden grew stronger, grounded in trust and understanding. One evening, as they sat by the lake, watching the sunset, Aiden took her hand and looked into her eyes. "Nora, I don't want this to end. I want you here, with me, for as long as we have." She smiled, her heart full of joy and hope. "I want that too, Aiden. I want to build a life here, with you." As they shared a tender kiss, the future they once feared became a promise of endless possibilities. Together they faced the sunsets, ready to build a new chapter in their story. A story of love, redemption, and the unbreakable bond they'd found in each other. Certainly, let's dive into an extended continuation where the depth of Aiden and Nora's connection is further explored, along with their developments, challenges, and heartwarming moments that test and strengthen their bond. The autumn leaves of Willowbrook shimmered in shades of amber and crimson, and with each passing day, Nora felt more grounded. It was a stark contrast from her former life, one marked by the constant gnaw of fear and regret. But here, surrounded by the scent of fresh pine and the laughter of children in the park, she could almost believe that peace was possible. And Aiden was there, making it real, grounding her in ways she had never known. In the quiet of an early October morning, Nora stood on the porch, wrapped in a wool sweater as she watched the fog lift from the treetops. She heard Aiden's truck pulled up and smiled, already feeling her heart race in anticipation. It had been 2 months since they'd meet, and every day her feelings for him grew, feelings that both thrilled and frightened her. Aiden stepped out, carrying a basket covered with a checkered cloth. His warm grin lit up his face as he approached her. "Good morning, Nora," he said, handing her the basket. "I figured we could have a breakfast picnic. Thought we could hike up to Willow's Peak." Nora raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure you want me hiking before coffee?" He chuckled. "Positive. Besides, I'll handle the coffee situation." He held up a thermos. "I'm prepared for every possible need." The hike to Willow's Peak was both challenging and breathtaking. As they climbed, Aiden pointed out wildflowers, bird species, and trees, each with a story or memory attached. Nora absorbed every detail, entranced by his connection to this place and how much it meant to him. When they reached the top, the view was nothing short of magical. The whole of Willowbrook spread below, a quilt of fields, houses, and golden forests. They laid a blanket on the ground, and Aiden spread out the contents of the basket: freshly baked pastries, cheese, fruit, and, as promised, a thermos for hot coffee. They ate in companionable silence, occasionally glancing at each other and sharing a soft laugh. At one point, Nora caught herself simply gazing at Aiden, noting the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, how his laugh lines crinkled as he smiled. She realized in that quiet moment just how deeply she cared for him. "Aiden," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I haven't felt this settled in a long time. I keep waiting for something to ruin it. I don't know how to stop feeling like I'll have to leave." Aiden reached for her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her knuckles. "I get it. You've been through so much. But you don't have to run here. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you." His voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. "This town, this life, it's yours now too, if you want it." Her heart pounded, her emotions swirling with a mix of gratitude, vulnerability, and the faint but persistent ache of fear. "Thank you, Aiden. I do want it. I just don't know how." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a reassuring embrace. "Then let's figure it out together." They stayed like that, holding each other, both absorbing the weight of the moment. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over them, filling Nora with a sense of hope she had never dared to feel before. In the days that followed, Aiden and Nora found themselves falling into a rhythm that felt both natural and intoxicating. They spent quiet evenings together, cooking in Aiden's cozy kitchen or watching movies curled up on the couch. Sometimes they sit on his porch, watching the stars, sharing stories of their past, their hopes and dreams. Each moment felt like a tiny step toward healing. But life rarely unfolds without complications. One evening, while Aiden was helping Nora fix a creaky door in her small rental, a knock echoed through the hallway. Nora opened the door to find a stranger, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a stern expression. "Nora," he said, his voice laced with a cold familiarity. "I finally found you." Her blood ran cold. This man was Dennis, her former boss, and one of the few people who knew about her past. "Dennis, what are you doing here?" she whispered. Fear laced her voice. Aiden, sensing her unease, stepped forward, his gaze hardening as he looked between them. "I came here to collect what's owed to me, Nora," Dennis replied, ignoring Aiden. "You didn't think you could run forever, did you?" Nora's pulse quickened. She'd once been desperate, cornered into making decisions that Dennis had exploited. She had believed he would let her go, that her debts were paid. But now it was clear that he had other intentions. "Dennis, I don't have anything for you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I told you, I'm done with that life." Dennis sneered. "People like you don't get to walk away. You know where you find me when you change your mind." As he left, Aiden closed the door, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Nora, whatever it is, we'll face it together." For the first time, she allowed herself to believe him. But that night, the old fears clawed at her heart, whispering that happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Aiden was relentless in his support. He stayed by her side, never asking for explanations she wasn't ready to give. His presence grounding her in ways words couldn't. Over time, Nora shared bits and pieces of her past, and Aiden listened, his acceptance unwavering. Yet, even as they grew closer, Nora sensed the shadow of Dennis looming over them, a threat that could shatter the peace they had built. One rainy evening, as they sat in Aiden's living room, sipping tea, Nora felt the weight of her fears become too heavy to bear. She looked at Aiden, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Aiden, I need to tell you everything about Dennis, my past, why I ended up here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He took her hand, nodding with understanding. "I'm here. Whatever it is, Nora. I'm not going anywhere." She took a deep breath, steeling herself as she recounted her story, how she had been young, vulnerable, and taken advantage of by people who saw her only as a means to an end. Dennis had used her desperation to manipulate her into doing things she wasn't proud of, and she had spent years haunted by guilt, struggling to escape his grasp. "I came to Willowbrook to leave it all behind," she said, her voice cracking. "But he found me, and now I'm afraid I'll lose everything again." Aiden wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close as she cried, her body shaking with the release of years of pent-up fear and shame. "Nora," she whispered, his voice filled with a fierce protectiveness, "you don't have to face this alone. We'll find a way to make him leave you at peace. You deserve a fresh start, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you get it." Over the next few days, Aiden spoke with friends in town, people who knew how to protect the ones they loved. Together, they came up with a plan, gathering evidence against Dennis's shady dealings and building a case to keep him away from Nora. Finally, the day came when Dennis returned, demanding a confrontation. But this time, Nora was prepared, surrounded by people who believed in her and a strength she never knew she had. "Dennis," she said, her voice steady, "I'm done being afraid of you. I won't let you control me any longer." He scoffed, but when he saw the determination in her eyes, he knew he was outmatched. Realizing that his threats no longer held power, he left, muttering curses under his breath. As Dennis disappeared down the road, a wave of relief washed over Nora. She turned to Aidan, tears streaming down her face, her heart filled with gratitude and love. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Aidan took her face in his hands, his gaze tender. "Nora, you were strong enough all along. I just helped you see it." In that moment, surrounded by the golden glow of the setting sun, they shared a kiss, a promise of the life they would build together, free from shadows and fear. In the months that followed, Nora and Aidan built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. They transformed her small rental into a cozy home, filling it with memories of evenings spent cooking, dancing in the kitchen, and late-night conversations under the stars. They traveled together, exploring nearby towns, visiting old friends, and creating new traditions. And each day, Nora felt her heart healing, the scars of her past fading as she embraced a future filled with hope and joy. One evening, as they stood on the porch, watching the stars, Aidan took her hand, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Nora," he said, his voice steady, "I want you in my life, for always. I don't care about the past. We faced